welcome back to the channel. First off, if you're a motorcyclist, don't switch off. This video is just as relevant to you as it is to the drivers. I just haven't made a car video for a while. Secondly, I haven't been around for a while. You probably noticed I haven't uploaded a video since I think late January. There's no real particular reason for that. I've had some other things going on in my life. This isn't a job for me or a career. I just do it when I've got the spare time. And I haven't had much spare time. So apologies for not uploading as regularly as I was doing last year. But hopefully we'll get back into it a little bit, get some more videos uploaded. So I've been having a few thoughts and a few ideas about what kind of videos I'm going to make over the next 12 months. And one of the ideas is an occasional series where I really get into the detail of one particular element of driving or riding. In this case, it's both, it's relevant to both. So like I say, if you're a motorcyclist, don't switch off, stick with the video, bear with me. And I'm going to kick off that occasional series by looking at limit points. Now I have covered limit points before. I've done at least 2 or 3 videos that I can think of where I cover limit points, both for the car and the bike. But I've always felt like I've been missing a little bit from those videos. It's probably because I try and keep the length of the videos down to a reasonable time. And I've always sort of felt that those videos were an introduction to the subject. They covered the general points that you need to know. But the more you get into limit points, the more you realise they're a really, really useful tool. They give you loads and loads of information about a corner that you're approaching. And they give you that information before you get there. So instead of getting to the corner and wondering what the hell is going to happen and, you know, it all being this air of mystery and then, you know, relying on your reactions and trying to sort it out in the corner, the limit point not only tells you everything you need to know about the corner, it gives you a list of instructions. It tells you exactly what you need to do and when you need to do it. And if you understand how to look at that limit point and how to work out what it's doing and how it's moving, there's no reason at all you should ever get caught out by a corner. Either a corner that tightens up or a corner that's tighter than you think it is on approach. So let's start with the fundamental basics of what the limit point is. Now, a lot of people describe, and I've described it as this in the past, describe the limit point as the furthest point that you've got an uninterrupted view of the road surface. But actually, with a bit more experience and a bit more knowledge, I'm going to describe it in more broader terms, because you don't necessarily have to see the road surface. Quite often the limit point can be identified by vertical features at either side of the road, so hedges or trees or stone walls or something like that. So for example, as we go over the crest of this hill, you might see the limit point actually where the offside hedge and the near side hedge cross over. If you look carefully, they're moving. There's a crest in the road. Same with this one here. There's a bit of a crest in the road, but where the near side verge and the hedge cross over, that's the limit point. So it's not just the furthest point you've got an uninterrupted view of the road surface, it's the furthest point you can see. So let's keep it really simple. The limit point is the furthest point you can see. And here's the next thing about the limit point. It doesn't, strictly speaking, it doesn't tell you how fast you can go around a corner. I get people coming to see me for days coaching, either on the bike or in cars. Say for instance somebody's bought a sports car. They know the car's got high limits, but they're a little bit intimidated by it, and the question I get asked quite often is, I'm struggling to work out how fast I can go around corners in this car. And I always tell them that's because they're asking the wrong question. It's the right question on track. If you're driving on a circuit where there's nothing coming the other way, no junctions, no cyclists, horses, none of that other stuff that we encounter on the road, that's the right question. How fast can I get this car through the corner? On the road, the question is different. The question you should be asking yourself is not how fast can I go around this corner, but can I stop in the distance I can see to be clear? And the reason we need to be able to stop in the distance we can see to be clear is because of that multitude of things that we have to build into our driving plans. Remember, we make driving plans based on what we can see, what we can't see, and what we can reasonably expect to happen. So I can see the road going into this corner. I can't see the road going out of the corner behind the tree, but in this area I could reasonably expect there to be somebody on a horse, a cyclist. I could expect there to be farm vehicles, animals in the road, potholes, a road accident, any one of 1,000, 10,000 different things that you could encounter on the road. So you've got to be able to stop in the distance you can see to be clear. And what's the limit point? it's the furthest point you can see. It's the distance you can see to be clear. So if we come back to the question about speed into corners, we shouldn't be travelling at a speed that doesn't allow us to stop in the distance we can see to be clear. So strictly speaking, the limit point doesn't tell us how fast we can go around a corner. What it tells us is how much we need to slow down, or whether we need to slow down, or if we need to slow down at all for a corner. So before we get on to the movement of the limit point and how it tells you what to do and it tells you when to do it, let's have a look at braking distances to start with, because if we're going to judge how much we're going to slow down for a corner by using the limit point, and we're doing that by asking ourselves that crucial question, can we stop in the distance we can see to be clear, then obviously we need to have a realistic assessment of the braking capabilities of our car. Now again, you know, on track you can do this right up to the limit of the car's braking. You can do threshold braking, activate the ABS, really stand the car on its nose, but we don't do that on the road. What we don't do on the road is go right up and use all our spare capacity up. We don't go right up to the car's limits, and we don't go right up to our limits. We should always have something in reserve. But having said that, if you start comparing modern cars and their braking capabilities with the braking distances and the stopping distances that are listed in the highway code, it's almost laughable how over-exaggerated those braking distances are in the highway code. Those braking distances and those stopping distances haven't really been changed or altered in nearly 100 years, certainly in the last 90 years. Now, on the one hand, that's not a bad thing, because we don't want people starting to rely on very, very short braking distances. But at the same time, it doesn't help when you are looking to assess whether you can comfortably stop or whether you can safely stop in the distance you can see to be clear. So let's park up somewhere, maybe a lay-by or something. Let's just have a brief look at braking distances, and then we can link that into the correct use of limit points when we're trying to assess our speed for a corner, or when we're trying to assess how much we've got to slow for a corner. So I've just pulled over on this quite long straight piece of road, because this will help us look at realistic stopping distances in a modern car. Now, I'm not talking about a sports car. I know it's a Mini JCW this, but you know, any modern car on modern tyres that's in good condition, with a driver that's capable and knows how to use the brakes properly, can match the braking distances that I'm going to talk about. So, and what I'm also going to do is build in a safety margin as well, so we're not relying right on threshold braking. The first thing I'd say about braking is that all modern cars now have really sophisticated anti-lock brakes and stability control systems. So although we try and avoid braking in corners, there's nothing to say that you can't. So when we're talking about braking in the distance we can see to be clear, if you get halfway around a corner and there is a cyclist in the middle of the road and we need to brake, then I want you to brake. You know, forget, you know, if anybody tells you it is a rule that you cannot brake in a corner, they're not worth listening to. You can brake in a corner. So braking distances, there is a video that I did a few years ago up in Scotland where I demonstrated emergency braking, and I showed you just how effective modern cars' brakes are. And in that video I managed to stop that BMW M135 on a slightly wet road surface from 30 miles an hour in just over 1 car length. So that's just about 12 to 14 feet. Now the highway code says that it's going to take you 45 feet to stop from 30 miles an hour, which is about 4 car lengths. If we look down the road from here, 4 car lengths, according to the highway code, is about where that car is now. I'll just pause it where that car is now. It's about 4 car lengths. The highway code reckons we'll stop there. In reality, if you hit the brakes full on, you'll stop in 1 car length. But we're not going to rely on that. We're not going to rely on that for the limit, because for limit point assessment, because we're going to build in a margin of safety. We're going to make sure we can stop in a slightly longer distance. So actually, I would say, you know, 2 car lengths is a realistic stopping distance from 30 miles an hour without even activating the ABS. Introduce the limit point now. I want you to imagine there's a corner in front of the car, and the furthest point we can see is that white mark on the road. And then ask yourself, would I be doing 30 miles an hour into that corner? The next thing you need to understand about limit points is the closer you get to them, the tighter the corner is. So look at that white mark there and imagine that's as far as you can see around the corner, and ask yourself, would I be doing 30 miles an hour? And the answer is no, you definitely wouldn't. 30 miles an hour is absolutely, if the limit point was there where that white mark is on the road, 30 miles an hour is the theoretical maximum that you could enter that corner at and still be able to stop in that distance. But in reality, because we have a safety margin built into ourselves as well, you're going to be doing less than 30 miles an hour. You might be doing 15, probably half of it. And from 15 miles an hour, remember that there is a multiplication with speed and braking distance. If you double your speed, you quadruple your braking distance. So of course, if you half your speed, you bring your braking distance down by a factor of 4. So if the limit point's where that white line is there, we already know we can stop easily in that distance from 30 miles an hour. From 15, if we go into that corner at half that speed, 15 miles an hour, which is a much more comfortable speed to go into a corner that's that tight, then actually our braking distance is going to be reduced by a factor of 4. So we're going to be able to stop in half a car's length. Look at that white mark again in front of the car. Look at where it is. We're going into a corner. The limit point is where the white mark is. We're doing 15 miles an hour. We get halfway around that corner, and there is something in the road that we need to stop for. We hit the brakes, we're going to stop in half a car length. So we're 2 car lengths away from the thing that we've seen. We're going to stop, all things being equal, 1.5 car lengths away from it. We're going to stop immediately. Yeah, thinking distance might push that a little bit further, but we're still well within that safety margin. So I'm quite a long straight here, just on this section of road, at the end of which is a right-hander. And all I want to do at the moment, I'm not going to look at movements of limit points or anything like that at the moment. All I want to do is look at that limit point and ask ourselves at what speed I'm doing, can I stop in the distance I can see? At the moment, yes, I can easily. But as we get closer to that corner, that limit point gets closer, so that the amount of space I've got becomes less and less and less. So I'm just easing off the gas here, waiting for the movement in the limit point. Now it's starting to move. I can still stop easily in the distance I can see. I'm going into that corner about 35, but actually we could see 7 or 8 car lengths into the distance. So realistically, I could stop from 60 miles an hour easily going into that corner, but it didn't feel right. It was too fast. It was pushing it a little bit too hard. So I've just eased off the gas, eased it down to about 30, 35, at which point, if something does come into view, I'm going to stop immediately. I'm going to stop really short of it. I'm not going to push my thresholds right up to that thing in the road. It's going to be a much easier stop. So let's pick the pace up a little bit here. I'm not going to go above the speed limit, but let's pick the pace up to 60, and let's have a look at a particular corner here. Look at this left-hander. Ask yourself, can I stop in the distance I can see all the way into this? Yes, I can stop. Yes, easily all the way around, because my view opens up quite early. Have a look at the right-hander down at the bottom of the hill here, doing 60 miles an hour. And I'm asking myself, can I stop in the distance I can see? And as I get close to that limit point and it develops, the answer is yes, I can stop. I can stop now. I can stop now. All the way until that limit point fires off into the distance. And all the way around that corner, I can stop from 60. Look at the next left-hander. This is a bit more restricted, so I'm just easing off the gas just a little bit. Can I stop in the distance I can see? Now I can. I can stop in the distance all the way around that corner. So all I did was reduce the speed by about 7 or 8 miles an hour. Can I stop in this distance here? Yes, I can. Now here's something you need to know about corners. If you live in a country where we drive on the left, there's more countries than you think that drive on the left. Left-handers like that one are tighter than right-handers. Does that make any sense? The first time somebody told me that, I thought, no, you're talking rubbish. What are you on about? Why would left-handers be tighter than right-handers? It's just a corner. But if you look at this one, this is a right-hander. We're going around this right-hander in this direction. If we were coming the other way, this corner would be tighter. And that's because in this country we drive on the left. And if you drive on the left into a right-hander, you are on the outside of the turn. You're prescribing a wider arc through the corner. You go into a left-hander, you're on the inside of the turn. The radius, the diameter of the curve that you're driving round is smaller, it's tighter. So this left-hander at the bottom of the hill here, going in this direction, is tighter than it would be coming the other way. Now you can reverse that in countries where you drive on the right. In countries where you drive on the right, right-handers are tighter, left-handers are more open. Now, one of the corners I want to examine is this one here. I'm going to turn around and go through it a few times in the other direction. But to start with, it's a right-hander. We've got a warning sign for a right-hander and a chevron board, and the limit point's getting closer. Now it's stopped getting closer, and now it moves away very quickly. So let's start looking at those three movements of the limit point. I'll turn around in the village and I'll come back to the other way. And what I want you to do is focus on that limit point, look at it, and see how it's moving in relation to us. So what happens is, as the limit point gets closer, the tighter the corner is. So the closer we get to that limit point, the tighter that corner is. So as we start getting closer and closer to that limit point is telling us, it's giving us instruction, it's telling us to slow down. Now the next thing you're looking for is the moment when that limit point stops getting closer to us. Get into the second movement of the limit point then. That's the point at which you've found the tightness of the corner. The limit point gets closer, the closer we get to it, the tighter the corner is. Then it stops getting closer. That's the point at which you can stop slowing down. So if you're braking, we can come off the brakes then. And we're still not at the corner. So the limit point then is telling you, you don't stop slowing down, get a gear. So let's have a look at the corner now. Look at the limit point getting closer. It's getting closer and closer and closer. Now it's stopped getting closer and it's starting to move away from us at a constant rate. Then it fires off into the distance. That's the third move. And when it fires off into the distance, the limit point is telling us to get on the gas and accelerate. Now we do want a little bit of gas at the start of the corner just to stabilise the car. It starts that weight transfer going rearwards. It's going to turn around here and go back again, but it starts that weight transfer going rearwards. It gives some positivity to the steering and it gives some certainty to the rear axle, to the rear wheels as you're going through a corner. But at the point where the limit point is moving away, that third movement, that's when we can increase that acceleration, because we're going to start taking the steering lock off, straightening the car up. The car's more stable when it's travelling in a straight line, and we can get more and more acceleration on and fire the car out of the corner. So let's have a look at it again. Let's see what it's telling me. Look at the limit point. It's getting closer, so I'm off the gas. It's still getting closer, so I'm on the brakes. Now it's stopped getting closer, I'm getting the gear, and now I'm accelerating and then firming it up as that limit point moves away. So when I said before that the limit point gives you a list of instructions, it tells you what to do and when to do it, hopefully you can see what I mean by that. The limit point, when you're approaching a corner, the limit point is your instructor. It is instructing you around the corner. It's telling you when to slow down, how much to slow down by, when to stop slowing down and take a gear, and when to accelerate through the corner. It tells you everything you need to know about that corner. The only other thing you need to get right is your position on approach, because your position on approach dictates how early that limit point will move. The more correct your position is on approach, that's near side on approach to a right-hander, offside on approach to a left-hander, the earlier you're going to get that movement in the limit point, the less you're going to have to slow down. So here we go. I'm in third gear. The limit point's getting closer. I'm off the gas. I'm on the brakes. I'm off the brakes now. Starting to accelerate, then building the acceleration up as we come out of the corner. Just going to do that corner one more time for you as a right-hander. Hopefully you can see now that as a left-hander it's tight, as a right-hander it's not. I'm going to approach it a little bit more enthusiastically, shall we say, at higher pace. We're on a national speed limit road. And remember the question that's always going through my mind approaching a corner: can I stop? Can I stop in the distance I can see to be clear? So fourth gear, I'm doing about 45-50 miles an hour here. Near side position on approach, I'm on the brakes now. It's not, but it's getting closer. I'm still on the brakes. Now it's stopped getting closer. Third gear, a little bit of gas, and then accelerate as the limit point moves away. Same for this one, little bit of brakes there. Now the limit point's starting to move. I'm off the brakes and a little bit of gas, but I know I'm coming into a 30 limit, so I don't want to accelerate too hard. So now I'm going to go to another little section of road that's close to here. It's a little B road that runs from Orton here over towards Shap. If you've ever been north of Kendal on the M6, you've seen this road, because there's a little section of the M6 where it splits into two separate carriageways just before junction 39, and this little road runs in between both of those carriageways. Right, so on this road now, let's apply that principle of limit point. The next one is to the right, and this corner is quite deceptive. It looks like it goes almost straight on, it doesn't. So I'm on the brakes, the limit point's just starting to move, I'm off the brakes, already in third gear, a little bit of gas, and then as it opens up I would increase the gas, but we've got the tractor, so I'm going to look for an opportunity to overtake the tractor. It's not quite enough view there at the moment, so I'm just going to follow it at a nice following position. Got a Volvo who wants to sit on my back seat, but he can wait. There's no opportunity to overtake at the moment. Now, there might be an opportunity here, so I'm checking the mirrors, moving out to look. Yeah, we'll have that. Easily get that overtaken before the junction. So, looking up ahead, let's try and pick out those limit points nice and early. Let's work out whether we can stop in the distance we can see. Okay, so there's the right-hander. We see the warning sign for the right-hander. We can also see a junction to the left, which I'll keep an eye on. But on approach to that right-hander, look at the limit point. It's getting closer, but now it's stopped getting closer. And can I stop in that distance? Easily, I can easily stop. So I'll carry that pace into the corner, no problem at all. Now I'm going out towards the centre line, seeking out the limit point. Again, can I stop in that distance? Yes, absolutely, no problem at all the way around here I can easily stop. So I'm just balancing the car on the gas. I'm going to have to move away from this parked car. So we'll do that in a straight line from the cattle grid there. But I can still stop in the distance I can see to be clear, easily. There's no question in my mind about it, and there should be no question in your mind either. If at any point you think, well, I'm not sure I can stop or not, you're going too fast. But is this a slow pace? No, it's not. Could actually do it quite a lot faster than this. I'm not going to do it because I'm always a good lad for YouTube. Now there's another interesting corner coming up in the distance here, and the other thing I want you to know about limit points is there's one other piece of information that the limit point gives you. You know it tells you how tight the corner is, you know it tells you how much to slow down and when to slow down and when to stop slowing down, but it also tells you how long the corner goes on for. Not just how tight it is, it tells you how long the corner is as well. And it does that through the second movement of the limit point. The limit point gets closer, then the second movement is it remains static, and the longer the limit point remains static, the longer the corner goes on for. So let's consider the limit point to be where the grass verges coincide here, where they cross over. So we're slowing down. Now they remain at a static point for a bit longer. Same with this one, it's a slightly longer corner, so it remains static for a bit longer, and then it opens up. So keep an eye on that limit point. Now, I don't want you to stare at it. I don't want you to just stare at the limit point. We've got to be scanning. We've got to be looking carefully at what's going on. You know, I want you checking your mirrors and scanning in the distance and looking for hazards nearby and all this other kind of stuff. But the limit point gives you so much information. I mean, sometimes there isn't a limit point. Sometimes you can see the whole of the corner. Here I can see all of this right-hander leading up to the junction, and I'm looking across to the right and I can see traffic coming in from the right. So the limit point here isn't relevant because I can work out for myself what I should be doing for this corner. But, you know, the majority of corners, you haven't got that view. And when you haven't got that view, you've got to rely on that limit point to give you the information that you want. So just to finish this video off, you remember earlier on I said to you, the limit point doesn't tell you what speed to go into a corner, it tells you how much or how little or whether you have to slow down for a corner or not. So I've come up to the A6 on Shap Fell, which is a fast sweeping road, and what you get with these faster sweeping roads is a very early movement in the limit point, and the earlier you see the movement away of that limit point, the less you need to slow down for corners, to the point where, you know, for a lot of corners on roads like this you don't need to slow down at all. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to put the cruise control on at 60 miles an hour, travel back in time, and I'm going to keep the car at that speed as often as I can, or as long as I can on this road. And what I want you to do is look at that limit point now, look how far away it is, and ask yourself that question: can I stop in the distance I can see to be clear? And the answer here, all the way along here, is yes, emphatically yes. You can easily stop in the distance I can see to be clear. The only exception being this next left-hander. So I'm going to turn the cruise off, I'm not going to brake, I'm just letting the car naturally decelerate and then pick the gas up again in that left-hander, and I'm doing 55 miles an hour. All I did was lose 5 miles an hour for that corner. Now for every other corner now on this little section of the A6, I'm looking at the limit point, and it's so blatantly obvious that I can stop in the distance I can see. I'm not even thinking about losing any speed. Look at the limit point for this left-hander now. Positioning to the centre line, the limit point is moving already. Look at it, I can see more and more white lines as the view opens up. So that view in the distance, I can stop now, get back up to 60 and stop again in the distance I can see to be clear. Not only could I just stop from the speed that I'm doing. Remember, I've got the cruise on at 60 here, national speed limit on this road. Up to the centre line for this car. Actually, I'm going to move away from the centre line for that HGV, because they do tend to cut them sometimes. But look at the limit point. And actually, as I move out here, you see the advantage of a position out towards the centre line. You get a longer view of the limit point. Here, look at the limit point. Look how early it's moving there. I don't need to lose any speed at all. This is the biggest difference understanding the limit point will make to your driving. It'll mean that when you're driving on roads like this, you won't slow as much for corners, because you'll just look at the corner and you'll think, can I stop? Gosh, yeah, easily. I can easily stop in the distance I can see to be clear. No problem at all. So up ahead now, the limit point is way off to the right. It's where the black car's disappearing out of view now. That's the limit point. Now it's getting closer at the moment, but I'm still 1/4 of a mile from it. And now it's starting to move. Look at that point in the road now, it's moving. So do I need to slow for this corner? Absolutely not, no. So the difference there between when the limit point is telling you to slow and when it's telling you that you don't need to slow is significant. And it's all down to that movement in the limit point in the far distance. So that's it for this video. I hope you found it useful. I'm going to do a few more of these. Not quite sure what to call these videos. More detail or something like that, I don't know. In depth. But I'm going to do a few more of these. I'm thinking I'll do one about system, one about overtaking, one about corner imbalance and how to apply the throttle in the corner. I'll do one for car, I'll do one for bike. Let me know if you found this useful, because it is a real, much more in-depth, almost a PhD in limit point analysis. And let me know if there's any other videos that you'd like to see or anything else you'd like me to cover. But for now, thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the video and got something from it. Don't forget to go and have a look at the website, reglocal.com. Loads more information there about advanced and performance driving and riding. Information about the books that I've written and how you can come and get a day's driver or rider coaching with me. If you fancy a ride out or a drive out on these roads, let me know and we'll see if we can sort something out. But for now, thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next time.